Thanks everyone for joining me for another episode on the Travel Collective, where we talk to travelers, give you tips on traveling and all kinds of information to make your travels more interesting and things you may not have thought about. And I'm excited to talk to Danielle today. So, welcome, Danielle.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, April.
Yeah, and so many people are now traveling with pets. So I know pet sitting is and house sitting is something you do, but I've been caught up in this question of wanderlust and where does that come from? Are we born with this desire to travel? Is it something we discover later in life? And I've met some people that just kind of don't have the travel bug like I do. So tell me a little bit about what wanderlust means to you.
Well, I definitely had a lot of that during the college years and prior to college. Wanderlust means to me just kind of getting up and going. And sometimes you have a plan of where you're going, sometimes you don't. If you need the airplane and hotel, of course you're going to have it planned. But if you're just going, 2 hours from home, maybe just hopping in the car and seeing where the adventure goes. So that's kind of what wanderlust means. I really think it's important to travel. You get to know not only different types of people, you get to go to different types of cultures. I mean, for example, New Orleans and the South is so different than Seattle. The East Coast has like its own total different flair to it, whether you're in New York, Boston, even if you're up in Vermont. So I think it's really important. And then if you go international, it's, way different, whole different cultures. And I kind of like to go and put myself in that uncomfortable space because then you learn so much not only about yourself, but if you're traveling with someone, you learn about that travel companion. And then you get to experience all these amazing things.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I do think there's certain people you can travel with and certain people you honestly can't travel with. So that's a whole nother topic. But sometimes I always think travel is a good like relationship too. If you're gonna commit to someone maybe long term, I had an experience where that was like kind of like a test in a way. If you can make it through travel, you can probably get through anything in life. So
I agree, because sometimes traveling can be stressful. And it's stressful just to plan for it because if you have pets
yeah.
or, kids or anything like that, depending on if they're going on the trip with you, you have to plan all of that, get it all packed up. And sometimes you're exhausted just packing up your house and making sure that everybody's taken care of when you get on the plane. And then sometimes the plane gets delayed, and then sometimes you check into a hotel and maybe they lost the reservation. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
anything
exactly.
can happen. So, but I would say my favorite place that I went was Belize.
Oh, I was gonna ask. Oh, wonderful. Did you go by
Mhm.
yourself? Was it a solo trip?
I didn't. I went for my honeymoon.
Oh, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so we had a choice of picking like one of the big all inclusive resorts, or we had a choice to kind of pick something smaller, which was more of like 30, bungalows. And so we chose that. And we went down towards Hopkins. It's on the south side, and let's see, we had snorkeling. We went uh, cave tubing, which was awesome. I
That sounds
mean, you're like
amazing.
in a tube going down a river, and there's all these rivers underneath the mountains and underneath
Wow.
Belize. And so you're actually in these caves, and then there's salt that forms in them. And it was really cool. We went to the ruins, and I mean, it was just every day we kind of had something different. And it was beautiful, and we were fortunate that we had tour guides that were locals. So they told us all the places to go, where to go, how to do it. And we kind of felt very special because we went at a time that it was not full. And so we had like 4 staff people to just us.
Oh my gosh, that's
So it was
great.
really intimate, really quaint, but then we had adventures along the way. So, and I would go back to Belize in a heartbeat. It's not that far either.
Wow, that's a good tip because that's a place I've actually never been. I haven't really given it much thought, and it kind of sounds amazing from what you're saying. When did you go? Like what month? What was the
We
weather
went
like?
in September. And so that was kind of like their off season, and it's not necessarily rainy season, but it was kind of like Florida where the clouds would come in, maybe dump some rain and then go away.
Yeah,
And
that's
it
not
was
too bad.
75.
Oh,
And I'm
that's like
like, I'm
perfect.
okay with
Yeah.
75 in September. Seattle's like,
Yeah, well, I'm sitting in Vegas, and I mean, September, it's still like last year it was like triple digits, and you can't even at night. I'm already like thinking ahead, like, where can I escape to in September? Just check out.
mm,
So,
Belize was beautiful.
that sounds amazing. So,
Yeah.
tell me about house sitting and pet sitting and how you kind of got into that.
Well, I would say about 6 years ago, I had golden retrievers. I've always had dogs since I was probably about 16 years old. We've had, either family pets or I had them during college, when, I was going to college and all the way through. So I've seen many different, types of dogs that we had. And then I went ahead and got 2 golden retrievers, and they were my babies before they were my fur babies before I actually had kids.
Right?
And so, it was wonderful. It was great. They lived to be 13 and a half, both of them.
Oh, wow.
And the second one was a heart wrencher. It died, suddenly. And so that kind of heart wrenched me a little bit. And I was just like, but I love to be around animals. And so at that time, my parents had gotten a couple more dogs, and they're, elderly or getting older. And so I started taking care of them while they would travel because they wanted to travel some more. And then me walking through their neighborhood, then another neighbor asked me, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing?" And I go, "Well, I'm just dog sitting for my parents." They're like, "Is this a business?" And I'm like, "Oh, haven't thought about it.
Right.
Okay, maybe I will." And so I just kind of launched it from there because then they referred me to somebody else and then somebody else and then somebody else. And I just kind of started expanding and had a set 10 clients for the last 5.5 years.
Oh, that's fabulous. Wow.
Yeah.
And that
And then,
allows them to travel more comfortably because it
mhm.
sounds like, do you then stay in their home or sometimes you do or you don't? How does that work?
So, majority of the time, I usually move into their home. And what's really important is that I don't want the dog or the animal, the pet. It's not, it's just was dogs for this time. But I've also take care of all different types of pets. I don't want the pet to have the extra anxiety, packing them up, moving them into a car, taking them maybe to another home, or even to, a kennel or an overnight boarding, which are great, fabulous places. Some dogs can't transition or they have a tough time. People sometimes have a tough time leaving their own sanctuary. And so I really want them to be in their own home. And so I work with the owner. I usually interview them, they interview me, and we take the time to really get to know each other to make sure that one, it's a fit with the dog, one, and then two, it's a fit with the owner and what their needs are. And so I move in and try to keep their normal schedule with the dog as much as I can. And it's so far when my clients come back, their dogs definitely do miss the owners, but they're not as, stressed out or maybe as clingy as they would be if they were displaced somewhere to another location.
Yeah. And the homeowner too has that additional peace of mind of when they're traveling that someone's actually in their home. Just like, if someone were to drive by, you're coming and going, there's maybe a car parked outside, someone's still picking up packages or mail, that kind of thing. And that probably is, nowadays that's a big piece of mind too.
That's a huge peace of mind that they have someone here taking care of their home, which once again is their sanctuary, just like I would be taking care of my own home. And that they have that activity. So then, if there is someone, roaming the
Yeah.
neighborhood, that, they would probably just move on from that particular house.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then if something, they have somebody here to watch the house too, because, houses, as they get older, you never know what happens with them.
Oh,
So,
totally. It's like I recently went away, same thing, just for a weekend, and I came back and there was like an inch of water in my laundry room, and I'm like, where did this come from? Yeah,
oh,
just like a broken, little broken pipes and things happen
yeah,
when you have an older house. It doesn't even have to necessarily freeze, but if you have places that are subject to weather and like you said, they're just getting older, things happen.
yeah, you never know. I mean, if you're an apartment complex, maybe the neighbor underneath would have known because maybe it was coming through their, the top of their ceiling, right? But if you're in a home and you have an acre, I mean, it could be
Yes.
days before people came to the home, other than maybe the UPS people, but they drop off the packages and they leave. So just having someone be familiar with the home and be living in it and have the heating on if it's cold out or, cooling the heat, the house down and just being there for the pet more than anything.
Right, exactly. So where are homeowners looking if they don't know someone personal like you to find someone to watch their dog or it's not a service I've actually heard much about.
So the best thing to do is probably just start with any of your neighbors. If you see that a neighbor has a pet, talk to your neighbors. Ask them, "Hey, where does your pet go when you go away?" And then if they don't know, have them ask another person. The other place that you could ask is your vet. A lot of the vets usually can work with, the house sitter and can usually cross promote where they're already a client, therefore they know you, they've already established that relationship. Those would be the two places that I would start with. um, and then if for some reason you have to go outside of that, just make sure that you have an interview with them, have them come to your home, do like a working interview where the dog's there, the owner's there, and they're getting to know each other. And then you can really decide within that half hour, 45-minute meet and greet if it's a good thing. Because not all dogs are pets in general, are just like people. Not all people get along, not all pets get along.
Right.
And so, but then they know the routine, and then you guys can talk about, the next steps. If you are a pet owner, the next thing I would do is also ask for referrals. Hey, can you, um, give me a phone number to one of your clients? I would like to ask them some questions, or, kind of almost like interviewing for a job, because it is a job and
Yeah,
it's your sanctuary and it's your home and you have valuables within your home, and you don't want someone to come in and, unfortunately, take valuables or something. So you want to make sure they're safe.
right.
But those would be the first places that I would start.
Yeah, the veterinarian is a good idea too, because then you might meet someone that's another pet owner and you could swap, if you have a similar, because again, like you mentioned, pets have personalities and certain dogs. I know myself, it's been a long time since I've owned a pet, but definitely when I'm out walking, certain dogs are like, they still kind of scare me a little. And I'm like,
Mhm.
that would probably not be a good fit for me to watch that pet, because they're going to sense that. They're going to pick up on that.
Yeah, they are. And then you get to know kind of the environment of the pet and the pet owner and kind of how they've trained that pet and, all of that. So you kind of get the history rather than just showing up the first day, having a key going in, the pet not knowing you, you not knowing the area. or, being familiar with the home. I think it's really important. I call it like a working interview, where you're interviewing them, they're interviewing you to make sure it's the best fit.
Yeah. So have you had some unusual pets that you've been, watched over or unique situations?
Hmm, I would say one was a rabbit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was kind of, very different because, rabbits usually are in their cage, and you can have them outside of the cage too, but it was just a different type of an animal to take care of, and so it was different. But it was still a lot of fun. They left a lot of directions.
Oh,
They gave
good.
me all the information that I needed, so that made it better. But that was definitely probably one of the, yeah. I would say the other one that I did, and this is the only one client that has not been a repeat client, was the dog was overly anxious. And
Oh,
I did pick it up the day that I was interviewing them, but the owner said, "Oh no, this is a rare day, blah, 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 blah." So I went ahead and took, the job. The dog was a beautiful dog. It was a great dog, but very anxious. And I didn't realize that I picked up that anxiety from the dog.
yeah.
And I'm normally a very calm person, and that's why animals like me. And so that was a shift for me, and that was, kind of difficult for me. And so afterwards, I was very honest with, the owner, and I said, "Adore your dog, totally cute." I said, "But this is kind of, where I was having the challenge." And she's like, "No." She's like, "I understand." She's like, "That's what the other pet sitters do too." And
Really?
so my word to her advice was, well, there's going to be someone that will be your right fit and someone that will be able to handle this type of a dog, and or be able to fend off, that vibe from the dog, because the dog was great,
Right.
but I mean, even after going for a walk, it was still, very anxious. Um, and I think it was just the dog itself. And so I said, then maybe there's people that could work with the dog to help you kind of break, that. But I'm not the right one. And so I gave her some tips and tricks and then just kind of move forward. But it was a good experience to understand that once again, not only humans can, affect the dog, right? But the dog can
Yeah.
actually affect the human, or the pet. It could be any type of a pet.
Right, and that it's
Make
not always
sense.
right, and it's not always a good fit. It's not a good or bad thing. It's just like you said, there's a right pet sitter for that type of dog or that type of
Hmm.
pet. It's just like people, we gravitate towards like-minded or we have similar, for whatever reason, but there are certain people that even will make us feel uncomfortable or just anxious or we just are nervous and maybe we can't always put our finger on it, but it's just the way it is and then it's not a good fit.
Yeah, and it wasn't just me, but I just explained to her, I think you need to disclose that at the beginning, and I think you need to find maybe more of a trainer that could help, you know, ease the anxiety or get to the bottom of the anxiety for the dog, so then that could help you guys in your home.
Right.
So yeah, that was I've been very lucky. A lot of mine have been referrals. And so I've been, very fortunate. But I am picky kind of as I did walk into one home, I remember, and it wasn't a referral. And it just didn't feel right.
Right.
There was just, for me, there was something off about it. And I just declined it very nicely.
Yeah, and that's it is. It's always better to decline something, but then put yourself in a situation where A, you're not going to be comfortable, and B, you may not do the best job just because of that. So it's
Yeah.
not a
Yeah,
bad
there was
thing.
just some vibe that I picked up that I don't know.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of clients and you've been picking up business and you're in the Seattle area, correct?
I am in the Seattle, Washington area, and I roam around Bellevue, Seattle, north, south, up to Bothell, south down to Renton. And so, yeah, I've really, really enjoyed taking care of my clients, not only the pets as my clients, but the homeowners.
Right. Have you thought about creating your own kind of database to vet other pet sitters and home sitters so that if for some reason at some point you're too busy to take a job, is that something you're looking to do?
Yeah, actually, I do have two other ladies that have their own businesses. And then, depending on the clientele, I will usually connect them. I don't promise that,
Yeah,
it's going to be a good connection, but, I'll sit there and just be like, hey, I can only take 3 days out of the five. Why don't you connect with, X, Y, and Z, and they'll go ahead and let's see if they're available to fill it in. Um, and majority of my clients do have like a couple backups on their own.
oh, good.
So they've just put me at the top, which is
Yeah,
really good and exciting. That means that I continually provide that good customer service to them.
right, exactly. Oh, that's fabulous. So, how far in advance should people think about hiring a pet sitter, home sitter?
I always suggest to go ahead and as soon as you book that trip, to go ahead and start searching for it. A lot of my clients actually book me throughout the whole year. Like they'll have their whole year. I have one client that has their whole year calendar, and she knows that I'm starting to get busier. And so she'll text me and be like, okay, boom, I need this. Boom, are you available here? Boom, are you available here? Are you available here? And she will book me out the whole year with all of her trips.
That's
And
smart,
then
though. That's really
that
smart.
way, if I'm not available, then she can have a backup plan. So I always suggest to plan ahead as soon as you know. Now, if it's a last minute weekend thing, of course, go ahead and, take what, go ahead and look. But understand that, you never know what the quality will be. I think there's a lot of really good pet sitters out there. My son actually pet sits down in California.
Oh,
So
really? Oh,
he's kind of taken on my legacy. My oldest one, who's in college. So that's kind of exciting because when he was, younger, he would go ahead. He already knew the dogs. He helped me raise my two Goldens. And so he's very familiar with pets. So he's been starting to get some jobs down at college.
that is great. And that's actually that's a good point. For a college student or, even a responsible high school student, perhaps, summertime or, it's a win-win. And they may, depending on the client, you hear about things where, they get to stay in someone else's home that's in a different neighborhood or a nice area. So it's kind of like a mini vacation in a sense.
Yeah, yeah, he's done about 4 jobs down there. And so he called me about a week ago and said, "Mom, I got another job." He's like, "It's all to you because I'm doing this," because I kind of showed him the responsibility and I would share the responsibility. I would have him come with me to the house sitting job, and all the people that I would have him come on the interviews. We were kind of tag teaming. And so now he's kind of branched off and started to get a side gig going on his own.
Right. Oh, that's great. And the fact that he has your experience too, of like you said, just knowing what questions to ask, because if someone's never really hired or had a pet sitter, or maybe they're new to it, they may not always know what to ask you or what to share. Like you mentioned about
Mhm.
how much food does the pet need or when does it, because those things are important for any routine, especially I think for older animals especially.
Definitely. What kind of medications? How many times a day do they take it? What is their normal way of taking it? Do you just mash it into the food or do you have like, one of those little pill pocket treats? It's like babysitting in a sense, and going into someone's home and taking care of their kid. You need to know the routine. You
Yeah,
need to know what's going on and all of that. They're they're another addition to the family.
right, exactly. Well, Danielle, this has been amazing. So, where to next for your travels? Is there anywhere in particular you're heading off to?
Well, my husband's been bugging me about going to the Philippines.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. That's another place I haven't been.
Yes, yes. For the last few years, he's Filipino. He grew up there, so he actually has been bugging me about returning to the Philippines and wanting to go to the Philippines for 2 weeks. So I'm saving up my money. So book some more pet sitting business here, and I hope in the no, I no I know in the next 2 years we will get there. So that will be a huge culture um, shock, but I think will be an amazing
Oh, I've heard
experience.
amazing things about the Philippines. There's so many, I mean, I've heard thousands of little islands and just the different foods and
Yes. Yes. The South End, I think, is what he said, usually has those beautiful islands and some resorts and stuff. And he's from the North End. And so we'll go to his small village.
oh,
And so, what I mean by a shock factor is, they don't live in wonderful homes like we do. And so their homes are built differently. And, the whole family kind of lives under
yeah,
in one
exactly.
room kind of thing. So it will be very different. I'm really excited. Other than that, it's just going down to California to visit the oldest kid.
So share with people how people can get in touch with you if they're in the Seattle area and are interested in connecting with you to watch their pets or have questions about house and pet sitting in general.
Definitely. So the best way to get a hold of me is either LinkedIn, Facebook. It's Danielle, Danie, Brzusek, Brzusek, and just send a message through there. I am in the process of getting a whole website together, so that will be launched here shortly, and that will be an additional way to get a hold of me.
Mm.
But that's probably the best way right now, and I look forward to hearing from new clients.
Yeah, that's exciting. And do you think your son would like a shout out for where he's at in California?
Yeah, so he's on the northern part of California and Thousand Oaks.
Oh, okay.
So, anybody that's in that LA area that needs a pet sitter, reach out to me, and I can connect you with him.
Perfect. Thank you
'Cause
so
he
much, Danielle.
loves he loves pet sitting.
Oh, and there's so many people, like I said, I think it's a really, people are really realizing again how less traumatic it is for the pet, for themselves, just that, having someone they trust in their home, especially when they're taking long, I think a lot of people are taking longer vacations when they can. It's just more cost effective. And after the whole pandemic a few years ago, I still hear from people that are like, you know what, they want to travel, they want to get it in as much as they can. So,
And that's a really good thought because a lot of people got dogs during COVID. So the dogs are used to people being home. And if you're traveling, that's definitely one other way. And second way to get a hold of me would be my email, which
yes,
is DANI, B as in boy, R as in Richard, Z as in zebra, 23 at Gmail.
fabulous. And I'll put all of that in the show notes as well. So you can refer to the show notes and get Danielle's information. And if you need a house sitter, a pet sitter in the Thousand Oaks area or Seattle, please reach out to Danielle. So thank you so much for sharing today, Danielle.
Thank you. Have a great day.